Today on the Amp'd UP211 podcast, Eric Eckenberger. Eric is an active amputee who enjoys motorcycles, snowboarding, and competes in boxing. During a tragic train accident, Eric lost his right leg and a portion of his left foot. Eric has gone on to not only win the 2023 first annual Amputee in the Ring Award, but also is the owner of Crooked Halo Clothing, a fashion brand that seems to define the strength and perseverance of this talented amputee. It is our pleasure to introduce Eric Eckenberger. Eric Eckenberger in the house. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, brother. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, man.
Coming from South Bend, Indiana.
Yeah, that's right. Good old South Bend.
South Bend, haven't been there, but I would like to go there. It's a place that I do believe my day job is going to take me at some point. At least we've been talking about it. But have you lived in South Bend your whole life?
I live right outside of South Bend. I was born in Mishawaka, just a couple minutes outside of South Bend. But currently, yes, I do reside in South Bend.
So you're like an Indiana original.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right?
Corn-fed and bread, everything. Yep.
That's great. That's great. I mean, we have guests from all over the world, and that is super interesting for me. And when I meet a Midwesterner like myself, we definitely have a connection point, just given our culture and what we experience in the Midwest. It is a thing. A lot of people don't really regard it as much, but, you know, people always talk about East Coast, West Coast in the U.S., but Midwesterners, there's definitely a type of person, a more relatable, let's say, type of person
Right.
that lives in the Midwest. So that's a cool thing. You know, I've done some reading, as I do with all guests, Eric, on you. You've shared a lot of your story with me through email, through some phone conversations. We've had the opportunity to get acquainted. So I'm coming at this particular interview in a very familiar space, but I also have a lot of curiosities about you. The thing that jumps off the page for me is that you have a clothing brand. You have your own, you know, let's call it homegrown empire that's happening.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Crooked Halo brand, as you call it, were you always someone that was interested in fashion? Was that something that was kind of like part of your life, part of your culture, like growing up? How did all that start?
The name Crooked Halo was going to be a snowboard company that I wanted to start. I was about 13 years old when I came up with that name. The actual logo for the company didn't come to fruition until February of 2020. But after my accident, I couldn't compete at the level that I used to compete, or I couldn't do the same things I used to do. And snowboarding wasn't as joyful as it used to be, but I still wanted to stay into the culture. So through the clothing, I was able to stay into the culture, and that's where Crooked Halo went from being a snowboard company to more of a clothing brand.
Wow, that's really cool. So in the spirit of that culture, that passion that you had, I mean, I'm a musician, so of course I always want to feel this sort of like connection point to that. And I don't perform professionally, and I don't do a lot of the things that I would have loved to do as a young man, let's say.
Right.
But I always have this sort of burning desire to still feel like my finger is touching it in some way. And looking at your website and looking at the brand itself, it definitely has that kind of cool, slick edge kind of to it. And I love the logo. I love the look that you've sort of created in that space. And definitely something that people should be checking out. And, you know, that goes back to the idea of clothing should say something about a person, right?
Yes.
And I think with people that engage snowboarding, skateboarding, any of those kind of types of activities, it seems to me, and you could probably speak to this better, fashion plays a role in all of that. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, that without a doubt. I mean, even going back to high school days where uh, kids that didn't even skateboard or ride BMX, I mean, they were wearing DCs or wearing etnies or getting into that whole street style type culture, even if they weren't involved in the sport. And that just shows the grasp the action sports had on that whole community.
Oh yeah.
So yes, I believe they go hand in hand for sure.
No, that's kick ass. And when you were coming up, obviously, given your connection to snowboarding, I'm assuming you were a pretty active kid. I mean, you were one of those guys out there that we see on all the videos, kind of punishing your body all the time.
Yeah, if it didn't hurt, if there wasn't an option of getting hurt, I probably didn't want to do it because that gave me that adrenaline rush that that I guess always been chasing, which kind of resulted in my accident was that chase for adrenaline. But
Were you
we'll
were
get to that.
I was gonna say, were you always kind of that thrill seeker, that guy that, I hate to compare it to like, because this is a whole nother level of, extreme, the whole jackass thing. Um, that kind of band of crazy that goes on where these guys are just putting themselves in like very, very dangerous situations.
Yeah, they were as far as the jackass scene goes. I was more controlled in my recklessness and in the fact that I could have landed it at I don't have to get hurt. Now I did have a lot of friends just do stupid stuff like Jackass was doing just for the laughs and stuff.
Yeah.
But no, that wasn't for me. I wanted to land it. I didn't want to get hurt,
Yeah.
but that was part of the thrill.
Yeah. So the adrenaline rush was probably part of it, but also wanting to pursue excellence in that particular discipline to say, yeah, I get off on the speed or the risk taking that's involved with this. However, I want to get really good at it. And that in itself is admirable.
Right, and I got pushed a lot, motivated a lot to do different things that my friends wouldn't do purely based off the fact is that they thought they couldn't do it. And I didn't see any reason why someone said they couldn't do something. So I would go ahead and try to push myself to do it. And if I did it, then they suddenly believed in themselves. So
Yeah.
it worked out pretty good.
I always refer to that as positive peer pressure.
All right, nice.
It's
nice.
when we push our limits, based on our peer group. And I always tell young people, try to surround yourself with people that are going to bring out the best in you. Try to surround yourself with people who challenge you, push you into uncomfortable spaces, and hopefully that can create a calculus for forward movement in your life where you feel like you're getting somewhere. And it sounds like you had a group of friends that, and hopefully still to this day, supported each other. And whether things got crazy or not, that was just you were part of that gang sort of mentality,
It wasn't. And unfortunately, a lot of the friends that I grew up with ended up going a different direction instead of distracting themselves. And then I've lost a lot of friends to pain pills and stuff like that. So there's very few of us still running around, but there are some of us. So
yeah, no, I understand. And from what I've read about you and in talking with you, it would seem to me that there are aspects of your childhood that were strugglesome. I mean, you've talked very openly about some of those trials, some of those things that occurred in your life that created maybe a need to thrill seek. Maybe you were trying to supplement some of your losses, let's say in family or in certain dynamics, with some of this excitement of wanting to feel like you were embracing life and doing things that tested you and made you, because here's the thing, I always say, okay, what makes me feel alive? Because there's certainly things that don't make us feel alive, things we have to do, that's the I have to, I'm supposed to, people expect me. those don't necessarily make us, as humans anyway, I believe, feel very alive. However, there are things, passions, different types of activities that we engage that very much make us feel alive, you know? So
Right.
I want to talk a little bit more about what you've been through, because we can dive right into your train accident and say, "Oh, Eric, this terrible thing happened. You know, again, thrill seeking, trying to jump on a moving train, going through a terrible accident, subsequent amputations." We could start there. However, it would appear to me that all of what you experienced in your youth and some of that struggle in your life sort of led you into that moment where
Yes.
everything kind of changed like in an instant, you know?
Yes.
So
I
if you
agree
don't
with you.
mind, I'd like to talk about that. Where do you cite in your mind when you think back, okay, this is when things started to get kind of difficult for me. How would you describe that?
The first event that would come to my mind, I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and one of my good friends at the time, him and his older brother actually stole a pack of cigarettes from one of the local stores, and his older brother made it across the street, and he didn't. He got hit by a semi, and
Mm,
I actually didn't shed any tears over that because I think I was too young to understand like the whole what death is and all that stuff. So that I think that's where it all really started. Um, and then like my grandpa, he passed away. He fell through the ice and drowned ice fishing when I was maybe 8 or 9. So it's losing people really close to me. Just became something that just happens.
and in a tragic way, because
Yeah,
people can
yeah,
die of natural causes. I recall my own grandfather passing, and it was somewhat of natural causes. It
right.
was not a tragic event like a drowning or some kind of you know auto bizarre auto, someone gets hit by a truck or whatever happened. Some of that is extraordinary, and I would think very hard to digest for a young man.
Yeah.
So that you feel like that's kind of where things started.
I think that was definitely the first Lego block of building strength and giving me the motivation to, hey, this is just life. This is just how it's going to be. So either you deal with it and push forward, or you're going to give up. And I don't give up. So the only option was to keep going forward,
Yeah.
even at a young age.
And how did you do as a teenager? I mean, what was the culture like? What was your friend group like? What were you engaging at that time?
When I was probably about 13 years old, I was still involved in soccer, still in snowboarding. I was still riding BMX. I was still being very active. I was no longer in baseball, anything like that. Then once I got into high school, I stopped all extracurricular activities, and I was just strictly riding BMX and snowboarding. Uh, and as far as my group of friends, we were all just people that just liked adrenaline, and we really, to be honest with you, we just didn't really give a shit about we didn't care about anything. We just wanted to have fun. If it scared us, then it was probably something fun to do. And that's all of us, everybody in my group, we were all the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I think about the accident itself, and it correct me if I'm wrong, this was something that occurred after you were drinking, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yep.
Okay. So had you had experienced any issues with substance abuse up until that point?
I've always struggled with alcoholism.
Okay.
And that kind of goes back to my father and growing up, and it just kind of runs in the family. That's not an excuse. It's more of me just saying, "Hey, yeah, I messed up. I was drinking," and
Yeah.
so I'm not trying to make an excuse for it.
No, not at all. And I was a very avid drinking, partying person when I was a teenager. Admittedly, like you're saying, admittedly, I got in a car many times when I shouldn't have, and drove a vehicle when I shouldn't have. So, that's my little come to Jesus moment to say, yeah, I did some things that I shouldn't have been doing, and
Right.
you know obviously there was a set of circumstances where you're drinking, you're having a great time, something in your mind, some light switch goes off that says, hey, see that moving train? I'm going to jump onto that moving train. And had you ever done that previous to that moment?
And it's funny. No, I have not. And I actually grew up 6 houses from railroad tracks. I waited at railroad tracks many times as a kid, waiting for that train to go by. I never once tried it. The one time I did, I was 20 years old, and it did not end up good. It's safe to say I won't be trying it again anytime soon.
Yeah. So I guess in my mind, I think, okay, you never tried it previously. So this was your let's call it your test flight, so to speak.
Right.
Like, hey, I think I'm just gonna jump on this moving train. Not that you weren't familiar with trains, because you, like you said, you live near one. You know how big and massive and dangerous they are, right?
Right.
I don't think we realize how powerful trains are until we're close up. So I'm a pretty avid cyclist. I ride my bike everywhere, and
Nice.
very often I get stopped at a railroad crossing because there's a freight train that's going by, and I sit there and I look at this thing and I think, this is one serious, massive, powerful, ominous piece of equipment that's clicking by right now. And never ever have I thought, oh yeah, I can just jump on, right? Unless I'm in a video game, I'm not jumping on the train.
Right.
So in that moment, when you made that conscious decision to start running, because I'm assuming you'd have to run to get on the train.
Yeah, that's where the alcohol came in. I really didn't even run.
Yeah, you felt like what? You just felt like you were floating?
And I felt like I could just jump on the train with my arms and I'd be good to go. And
Wow.
my legs got tossed. Yeah, I know.
Wowee. So you just literally just like jumped forward, reached out to grab what,
Very
like a
much.
ladder on the side of a car?
Exactly, the ladder outside of the car. It was a Norfolk Southern freight train. Yeah,
Wow. And I'm assuming you just got sucked under.
I did. And then I was found about a block away, and I actually jumped on the train. There was nobody around me when I did it, and the lady who found me had actually just got up from bed. She was thirsty and was getting a glass of water, and the window above her sink actually looked over the railroad tracks, and she's the one that called 911. So there's either a trash bag or a person just got hit.
Hmm. So when the train rolled over you, your lower extremity, um, it just it kind of kicked you away from the tracks and you were just nearby. How did that all occur? Or do you not
From
remember?
what I was told from the first responders is that I was found on the adjacent tracks. You know, one goes one way, one goes the other. I was found on the adjacent one. I still had both my legs. I did end up passing out from blood loss. Uh, and then when I woke up in the hospital, I had what I called a rat trap on my right leg because there's just poles going everywhere trying to hold it together. And I still had all
Mm.
my toes on my left foot. Nothing got cleanly amputated.
More
Yeah,
crushed. Sounds like more crushed than amputated.
more just completely mangled.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you say in that process, subsequent would have been the moment where you had that, like, oh no, what have I done kind of moment?
The moment I was on the track looking up and I realized I didn't even care to try to get help because I knew like this was it. I thought this was it.
Yeah, my life's
I
going to end
I
right here.
yeah, I finally got that rush that I was looking for, and this one I'm not coming back from is what I thought.
Mm. And the days after in the hospital, I mean, tell me what that was like. What was that grieving process like for you?
Uh, that's a very, very good question. I was so under the influence of medicine and just the disbelief of what was going on that when it first happened, it really didn't fully hit me until the doctor came in and was like, hey, we could keep your leg or we can amputate it. And if we amputate it, you're probably gonna be much better off. I think that's when it finally hit me like, oh, things are never gonna be the same now.
And you lost one leg below the knee, and then a portion of your foot, or an entire foot?
I lost. Well, we'll put it to you this way: they said if they had to amputate any more on my left foot, that I would have 2 prosthetic legs. So I have no toes on my left foot at all.
Mm-hmm.
If there's that big pad behind your big toe,
Yep.
That's amputated off. So
Mhm.
there's really nothing left, just a skin graft and a little bit of a foot.
Yeah. And then right leg below the knee, correct?
Yeah, 6 inches below the right knee.
Okay, got it. So really in truth, you're a double amputee. And
I am. Yeah. I don't like to say that I'm a double amputee because there's so many people that have it worse. But yeah. I'm sorry. I
well,
didn't mean
you
to
know, there's varying degrees, and you're right. And I try to be careful about that whole talk about so many people have it worse. I mean, I've met quads that are living out their lives in magnificent ways, and I
For
tend to go to that. Okay, well, they have it much worse, and they'll look at me and say, no, I don't have it worse. It's just different, you know.
Right. I like that.
It's just different, and you know, I don't think our struggle is necessarily measured by the degree of amputation. Everyone manages this situation differently. You're in a incredibly inspirational position, that you live a very, very engaged life. You're still an athlete. You have pursuits professionally that exceed some people's wildest expectations. Many amputees look at someone like you and see you as a very much a success story in terms of your comeback, which is always evolving, which is always part of the plan and what we're trying
Right.
to accomplish, me included. And I try to keep it in a, hey, anyone that has experienced a disability on any level, nobody knows how bad that is for them,
Right.
and how much that's affecting, you know, their ability to live their best life. And you know, given that you were into snowboarding, I guess the place that I go to, thinking about, you know, your accident, finding out, okay, doctor comes in, reality check, hey, you're you know, there's going to be an amputation involved. In that moment, the my life's about to change. This is the question that I ask a lot of amputees, especially traumatic survivors, is, so in your mind, what is your thoughts in terms of prosthetics, in terms of adapting as an amputee? Like, what is there anything that you're thinking, how do I move forward from this?
Not any initial thoughts. At the time of the accident, I wasn't even involved with social media yet, so there was no groups or anybody to look out to. All I knew was that I'm not gonna give up. I didn't really have any other choices, and we haven't touched on it yet. But February of that year, one of my best friends, a gun went off and hit him in the side of the head. So when he passed away a couple months later, the train accident happens. My mind is still with him, and helping out with my friends and making sure everybody else is staying strong through that tragic accident. I kind of put myself to the back burner because I'm strong enough to get through it. I don't know if I knew that, but I know that now.
So you're grieving the loss of a friend. You've gone through this horrific accident, life-threatening accident. You finally come to out of that medical fog, let's call it, and you're still dealing with the residual feelings of losing your
Yeah.
friend.
Once I got out of the hospital, it was 1 month in the hospital recovery time. I obviously had to recover a little bit longer at home. The only thing that could really explain what I was thinking was I wasn't used to who I was, and I was definitely not used to who I became. So it was really hard for me to ask anybody questions because I didn't even know what questions to ask. Um, I mean, I was still worried about my other friends. You know, just as how it was.
Yeah. And what would you say to a new amputee? So I come to you and I just found out I'm gonna have an amputation, and what would be your advice given the life path that you've had up to this point?
It's going to be a hell of a ride. And I know you're thinking it's going to be a bad ride, but it's actually very inspirational. You're going to open up a lot of eyes, mainly your own eyes, about how many people are going to be inspired by just you learning how to walk again, or you learning to do something, or you even doing something they wouldn't be willing to try to do with all their limbs. Um, the main thing is, I guess, patience and day by day, because there's a lot to come.
Yeah, I think the day by day theme, hour by hour, if necessary, minute by minute, is the
Right.
is the mantra of most amputees, because just walking across the room can seem impossible at first.
Yep.
And someone like yourself who is winning awards for boxing, um that's, to me, is extraordinary. Is that something that you ever thought, like, oh yeah, that's something that I'm gonna do?
No. I never seen myself going that path. I did grow up in a taekwondo family, and my dad was big into it. And I did do a few classes. I was never really big into it, but I was always a fighter, whether it was with emotions or physical. So when the boxing presented itself, whenever I was asked if I could do this or if I could do that, I never questioned it. I just said yes, and then I figured out the variables later on.
Yeah. Yeah. So goal setting, and then, okay, how do I reach that particular goal? I'll fill I'll
Well,
I'll fill in the blanks somehow.
well, yeah, I have a lot of oh shit moments. Like, how the hell did how did I get myself in the situation? I'm in the situation. I can't back out now. So how are we gonna get this done? So there's been yeah, I've got myself into many many oh shit moments in my life.
No, that's a brilliant way to put it. Um, when you think about, your clothing brand, what you're doing in the sports arena, and, you know, coming on a podcast and talking about your life experience, and so many of us out there are going to hear your story, and they're going to be inspired. They're going to say, okay, like, I can get to tomorrow. Like, this
Oh
is
yeah, you can.
this is
Yeah.
going to this is going to work. I can do this. And those things that they thought they couldn't do, or that were, let's say, over in their lives, that there was, those dreams were going to end. Um these kinds of stories are the ones that people will circle back and say, no, 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 I'm not giving up on that.
No,
You know,
you just have to do things a little bit different than what everybody else does. For a perfect example, I used to try to wakeboard even when I had both my legs, and I
yeah,
could never get up on top of the water. It wasn't until I lost my leg and I wrapped my prosthetic in a trash bag, got strapped into the wakeboard, and I decided to try opposite of what I normally would have done, which is riding switch with my right leg forward. And for the first time, I got out of the water. I never got out of the water with both legs. I got out of the water with one leg and no toes though. It's just I didn't give up.
it's amazing, right?
I guess so. I mean, to me, it's just another way of figuring something else out. I don't really see it as. I just see it as a different way to get the same thing done.
Well, you're very humble. I mean, how when you think about the amputee culture, because you mentioned social media, and, we're talking about perceptions of people,
Right.
right? How do you want amputees to be seen? How do you want, the general public, let's say, to see someone like you and me?
I don't think there's any reason to look at us any different. I'm sure it looks weird when you see us jumping on one leg or we're crawling around, or like I was at a place not too long ago, it was a couple months ago. My leg came loose, or my foot came loose, and it was spinning around, and I had to ask, for an Allen wrench. I mean, there's little different things, but at the end of the day, it's still life. I mean, there's still a heart behind the physical body. So I don't really know what I would say to. I don't know. I don't know what I would even say to myself. I don't know. That's really hard. That's a really good question.
Well, I think for me, it's all about normalization. There's
Right.
there's this effort to normalize, at least from where I'm sitting. I think, okay, what am I doing as a person, as a functioning person, an active person, someone who pursues my dreams, my passions? How am I presenting myself to the world in such a way that someone says, I know Rick, he does this, this, and this, and all these other things. And oh, yeah, and by the way, I think he's an amputee too.
uh,
If I've done my
d-
job as a
I got
human,
isn't it kind of cool though when people ask you that, like they don't even know that you're an amputee, like they're like they just look at like what you're doing and then they find out you're an amputee and suddenly they think it's so much like, oh wow, it's even better. But to us, it's kind of like, no, that's just kind of what that's
exactly.
just what I do.
Yeah. It's one of the greatest compliments you can pay an amputee. And it
I
and
tell them they're not,
and it has to come from an honest place. It can't be contrived. Is to say, you know what, dude? I never knew until you walked in shorts that one day. I never
Right.
knew that you were an amputee. I
Right.
had no idea. And to
I
me, that's the goal.
Oh, it's huge, and I still ride a Harley, and I don't modify any of my motorcycles at all. Meaning that I brake on my right side with my prosthetic, and I shift on the side with no toes. And I was actually even a part of a club at one point. Without going too deep into that, I'm just letting people know that people are probably going to ask, well, how do you shift with no toes? Well, I just got the shifter caught on my boot and I pulled up. It's just a matter of doing things differently. Everything can be done the same, but the approach just has to be different. That's it.
So do you feel like adaptation is a major sort of like key force in your life? Is that just do it differently? Do it,
I,
just do it
I,
differently.
but I would say the term I would probably use is just be extremely open as far as flexibility goes.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work this way, have some patience. Think about it. You take a nap on it if you have to. Come back to it. You'll get it figured. You'll get it figured out.
So, talking about something as rigorous as boxing, how do you go at that as in terms of the discipline that's involved, the mobility, the agility, the strength, all of those things that are required? Um, give us some tips. I mean, what does that feel like for you, and how did you do it differently? How did you adapt?
Literally, like we had just talked about, the whole step mentality. When I walked into that boxing gym, I went there by myself. All I did was stand in the corner, watch everybody else, and then I was offered, or I was asked by one of the coaches. Her name is Eva Jones. She's actually like a three-time women's world champion in boxing, 11-time on her own accord. She's got a lot of accolades, I should say. And I started walking around the track, around the ring, and then I started going sidestep. And then one day I started jogging, and I'll never forget. I felt my hair move because I was moving so fast. And when I felt my hair move, I finally realized I'm doing something here. And next thing I know, I was running a mile every practice. Well, 1 mile one way, so 2 miles every practice, and
Yeah.
um,
That's
yeah,
the shit. That's those breakthrough moments, when you say, "Holy shit, I'm doing it." Like I'm doing it.
right.
I'm doing it.
Yeah, those are the moments that are tear worthy,
Big
especially in a
time.
personal aspect when you haven't when you haven't have like people really something as small as having your hair move when you're running. It's something that was very, very for granted, at least on my side, until it happened, and then I realized like, wow, uh, just little things.
It's the little things, I've been a drummer since I was 5 years old. I've been involved in music my entire life. And, losing my right leg, it's a critical piece of drum playing. It's almost more important than your hands. It's a major fundamental component of playing a drum kit is you have to have your right foot. It's very difficult to do it without. And there were definitely times where I believed I don't think I'm going to be able to do this anymore. I don't think I'm going to be able to adapt. And I did have a few of those moments that you're describing where suddenly your prosthesis, being an amputee, all of the stuff, the baggage that comes with this situation dissolves.
Right.
And you say, holy shit, I'm doing it.
Right.
Like,
There's no better feeling.
Yeah, it's like I'm hitting my stride. Everything is happening. I'm performing. I'm playing. I'm competing. I'm doing this at a level that I can be proud of. And I think that's something that all amputees should develop a desire and a thirst for, to get to those golden moments of joy and happiness, you know? And, you know, stories like yours help me fuel that desire. Because when I see someone like you in these spaces, it's, you know, it's something that I know I could never do. I think I actually, when I was younger, I tried to work out on a heavy bag once. Dude, oh my gosh. And this is when I was young and in shape. Talk about the most exhaustive workout I've ever done. Because
Yeah.
someone will say, oh yeah, just work on this bag for, 15 minutes.
That's a long time to just go out a heavy bag.
I'm like, I felt like I was going to die. I mean, I was
Right.
out of breath.
You got to pace yourself.
I was out of breath. My shoulders hurt. My hands hurt. I'm thinking, how do guys go into a ring and they have to perform at this level, and they also have to get hit while they're doing it? And I
Yeah.
kept thinking the heavy bag isn't hitting back.
Right.
What if it starts hitting me back? Now I'm really screwed, you know?
Right. Then you really want to pace yourself because you got to have some energy for that defense for sure.
So it's all very calculated. What would you say is the next big thing for you? Like what are you excited about in terms of your future?
Right now, the biggest thing on my mind as far as a business venture would definitely, there's a Crooked Halo bourbon that's in the discussion right now. Just because my shoulders are starting to get real bad from crawling, and just the overall deterioration of the body from the surgeries and everything. And my next big goal is to be able to sit back, and I want to turn Crooked Halo into like the next Red Bull or the next a big X Games, or music festival that involves a skate park or involves
Wow.
amputee, especially when amputee is involved too. I want to have both categories.
Where does your
Right now,
entrepreneurial spirit come from? Where does that come from?
I don't know. I don't. I'm to be honest with you. My brother Rodney, he owns his own tattoo shop. He's highly, highly successful. I've got a sister who's also wrote a book. But as far as, I think it's because, to be honest with you, man, and not to come across any type of weird way, is I just don't like to listen to people tell me what to do. So I was like, I just want to do it. I don't want it to be told what to do.
I don't want someone bossing me around. That's why.
Right. I want to get up and walk at my own pace. I don't need you to tell me what to do.
You might find this interesting. Most people that are very entrepreneurial and very, very focused on their own personal path and business and enterprise come from the same thinking, which is, I don't want to have a boss. I want to be my own boss. I want to be in charge of myself. I want to create opportunities for other people, but I just don't do well when someone is barking orders at me. And that's just a certain personality type where you tend to press into leadership roles, and you have more of a visionary attitude and aptitude, where you look at a concept, you look at a brand, you look at a logo, you look at, a product, and you see the possibilities. You see the expanse in front of you. There are a lot of folks, and this is not a knock. This is very admirable as well. They're just very good worker bees. They do very well with instruction. They really take a lot of pride in doing a good job for a company, for a person, and they reap all those benefits. They do very well. But then on the other side of that are people like yourself who say, you know what? I need to have my own flag in the sand. This is my thing. This is what I do. And when you start talking about building your brand and branching it out and pulling in other aspects of, that concept, whether that be music, who knows, beverages, whatever that is, to say, this is going to be a lifestyle brand. This isn't just
Exactly.
This
A
isn't
lifestyle brand.
Yeah, this isn't clothing. This is about lifestyle, and that's an amazing endeavor. The one thing I wanted to ask you that I found kind of interesting when I was looking at, Crooked Halo and what you're putting out there in terms of your brand, particularly the website. Why are you not as much of a focus? And I mean you, like Eric, the
Yeah.
amputee, the founder, the visionary, is that by design? Like you want the brand to speak for itself? You don't want it to be about you? Or is
I don't want to bottleneck my target market. There's a lot of people out there that were just like me and my friends before I lost my leg that would completely benefit from the mindset of having a crooked halo. And a crooked halo doesn't mean you're a bad person, but I mean, let's be honest, we all have good moments and we all have bad moments. So everybody I've ever met in my life, at some point their halo was a little bit crooked.
Yeah.
So I don't want to. I don't really think I've done anything crazy that any other person couldn't do if they just put their mind to it. I think anybody could achieve it. I don't understand, and I know sometimes it's me just not giving myself enough credit or not having enough confidence in myself, but I just really don't think that it's completely unachievable by anybody else.
No, and I appreciate, how humble you are, and that in itself is very inspirational. Typically people who are really enterprising, they're sort of almost desperately seeking personal attention. Yeah, it just becomes like all about them and who they are. Because Eric, your story is extraordinary. I mean, what you've been through and what you're doing now, and I feel like you're a little bit like this demonstration of like lightning in a bottle. You kind of have like all of these potentialities for outcomes, and you've touched some things, you've gotten into some things, but I feel like you're about to explode a bit.
I'm getting that feeling every day now. In fact, which we talked about, this is the first podcast I've ever been on.
Yep.
I've already got one set up for next week, and it's
they're going to be calling.
Everything is just like coming at one time, and
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest with you, bro, sometimes a bro just needs to wake up before he can answer some emails. It's like everything is starting to roll in at one time. So yeah, even we were just on a cruise last week. I had to do 2 Zoom meetings that involved the bourbon while I was on the cruise.
Yeah.
So things are just picking up on in every aspect, because unlike or just like walking or the whiskey or whatever it may be, the clothing line, everything gets 110%. I don't if you're gonna half-ass it, just stay in bed.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I hear you. And I do think that the future is bright for someone like yourself. I'm going to be following you for sure, watching your progress. And when your fame and fortune elevates to a very high level, you are going to say, you know, that Rick guy's cool. I'm going to go back on his show because even though everyone else wants me to talk to them, I'm going to come and see him because he was kind of like there in the beginning when all this started popping.
Yes, no, and it's very true. And honestly,
We're
you
recording
were the
this
first
right
person
now.
I reached out to. You were literally the first person I reached out to when everything was happening.
Yeah, no, it's
And
been such a pleasure to get to know you, and I know we're just kind of scratching the surface at this point. And
yeah.
you know, that's why I think, okay, Eric's definitely on the list of people we have to call and get back here once he's had a chance to go and do his empire building from South Bend, Indiana. You know, I love these stories because they always start in these very, very kind of remote, kind of small, kind of, you know, little town kind of beginnings, right? You being, you know, sort of this thrill-seeking, kind of rebellious young guy that goes through this life-threatening situation and survives it only to triumph, you know, in other aspects of his life. And it's a very engaging and captivating life story thus far. And I know you've got a long way to go, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Me too, and I do want to mention the just the amputee in the ring from the National Boxing Hall of Fame. When I found out I was receiving that award, I want to make sure people know that it wasn't about a fight record or how many fights you had. It was more about the mentality and getting in the ring when people didn't think you could or you would. And this was the first annual award. So for every year from now on, the National Boxing Hall of Fame will be awarding an amputee with an award, basically saying thank you for everything you're doing for the sport and keep pushing. And that award wasn't just for me; it was for everybody.
Yeah, that's rocking, man. I was aware of that. I knew that this was, you know, setting a precedent for future amputees, you know, setting a bar, saying we need to get other active amputees into these spaces. Once again, advocacy, normalization. Hey, we can do this too. All of that stuff is super important. You know, Eric, again, we're going to wrap it up, but I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being on today. Thank you for spending the time. And I know you're going to be on many podcasts, but I'm proud to say that this is the first.
Yep, this is the first one.
So,
for sure.
Eric Eckenberger, thank you again. My name is Rick Bontkowski. This is the AMP'D UP211 podcast. I want to wish everyone health and happiness, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.